Of course, Joseph was one of the original sons of Jacob. Jacob had 13 sons. And in the land, the tribes of Israel in the land are 12 tribes in the land. The reason there are 12 tribes, even though Jacob had 13 sons, is because Levi did not get land. Levi was not given land. He is given, when I say he, I'm talking about the tribe. The tribe is given cities in the land to live in, Levitical cities, but they're not given a land. Well, Joseph isn't given land as Joseph. And so you have two sons removed, and here you have Ephraim and Manasseh to fill into those spots. So, Ephraim, the man who was the second son of Joseph, and probably Jacob's favorite. When you look at the blessing of Jacob in Genesis chapter 48, his blessing on Ephraim is he puts Ephraim, although he's the second born of Joseph, he mentions Ephraim before he mentions Manasseh. Manasseh's blessing is only in verse 17, combined with Ephraim. Now you know that Jacob's favorite son was who? Joseph originally. It was Joseph. Of course, when Benjamin came along, he was more kind towards Benjamin. But Joseph was his favorite son, and probably as Ephraim being the baby of the favorite, probably Jacob's favorite, even of the other ones. And so if you go and read the blessing on Ephraim in Genesis chapter 48, it's completely different than most everybody else's. It's a highly favorable blessing, and then he throws Manasseh into the blessing at the very end of it because he's of Joseph. But he's blessed by Jacob in Genesis 48, 19 through 20. I'm sorry. Yeah. And he probably, I thought the reference was wrong, but that's right. Okay. No, let me move on. As Jacob's favorite, blessed there. Let her be the tribe of Ephraim. Now, the tribe is blessed by Moses in Deuteronomy chapter 33. And this is the tribe that Joshua came from. Joshua, the son of Nun, of the tribe of Ephraim. And that was surely in that day probably was a point of pride for the tribe. They were the royal tribe of the northern kingdom. If you know that the nation of Israel in the Old Testament, there was a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. And the southern kingdom was just about Judah. That was it, was the southern kingdom. And Judah was obviously, if Judah's just about now Simeon existed within Judah, so they were part of it. But Judah was the royal tribe of the southern kingdom. We talked about that last week. Whereas Ephraim is the royal tribe of the northern kingdom. Many times in the Word of God, you'll read of Ephraim, and it's almost all-encompassing of the northern tribe. That's how much influence and impact the tribe of Ephraim had on the northern kingdom, is that oftentimes the northern kingdom is just called Ephraim because they were the greatest almost, if you follow me there. They were looked at that way. Some important cities in the tribe, in the land. Shiloh. Letter A, Shiloh. Shiloh was the city of the tabernacle. Whenever the children of Israel came into the land, they got to Shiloh, and that's where they set up the tabernacle. Tabernacle, of course, being the place of worship. And it was set up in Shiloh. I believe it was Shiloh that Dad went to a couple of years ago, wasn't he? And Aaron went there, and they did some excavating. I don't know that they actually did excavating. They hauled a lot of dirt. I know that. But they were involved in an excavation, archaeological excavation in Shiloh, where they believed that the tabernacle, in an area they believed the tabernacle was. Of course, everywhere they dig, they believe something was there. No matter where you're at in Israel, when they start digging, something happened right there. But Shiloh was the city of the tabernacle, the original place of the tabernacle, and it wasn't until David went and brought the... Now, of course, it was abandoned, and no one, after several years, no one actually went to the tabernacle for worship or anything like that until David finally brought the Ark of the Covenant down into Jerusalem, and they built the temple there. Letter B, Gezer. And here we have again a difficult thing. If you look at chapter 16, verse 10, and they drove not out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwell among the Ephraimites until this day, and serve under tribute. I hate to rehash it over and over, but this is part of the problem. They went into their land, and although they were a royal tribe, and they were the tribe of Joshua and had favor, they followed suit with seemingly everybody else, and they went and just left the city of Gezer, the Canaanites, in the city of Gezer alone. And they brought them into subjection to them. And it goes back to what they did with the Gibeonites. When they thought, well, this would be a good idea. Oh, yeah, they'll serve us. They'll serve. We can do other things, and they can work our fields, and they can do this. And so they made them tribute to them, but that's not what God wanted. God did not want them to go in and make them servants unto themselves. He wanted them to go in and drive them out of the land. He said, if you'll go do it, I'm going before you, but you've got your part to do. And then letter C, Bethel. And Bethel means house of God. Beth is house. In Hebrew, Beth is house and El is God. So house of God. And Bethel, of course, is the place where Jacob wrestled with God. He wrestled with God. And it's called the house of God. And it's just southeast of there. It's just southeast of there where God put His name. And if y'all remember that presentation that I do, where there is written, I was looking at it, I've got a map. It's not a map, it's just a satellite image. It does have cities and stuff on it, but it's a satellite image of the Holy Land of Israel. And right there by Bethel, in the mountains, is the Hebrew word for God, Jehovah. Place where God signed His name. It's a pretty cool thing. But that's Bethel. Okay, so that's Ephraim. Not a lot about Ephraim. Chapter 16 isn't even all about Ephraim. The first 6 verses, I believe, first 4 or 5 verses are about Manasseh, and then the rest of it is about Ephraim. Then we come, number 2, to Manasseh. And chapter 17 is devoted completely to Manasseh. And we've talked about Manasseh before, who he is, the man. He's Joseph's oldest son, blessed by Jacob, in Genesis 48:20. And that's kind of old news. We talked about that when we talked about East Manasseh. Second of all, the tribe. Again, I'd forgotten about this. In Moses' blessing, if you look at the tribe under Ephraim, Moses' blessing is Deuteronomy chapter 33, verses 13 through 17. If you come down to blessed by Jacob, Manasseh blessed by Jacob, is Genesis 48:20. He's just part of Manasseh's or Ephraim's blessing. If you come to number 1 under the tribe, blessed by Moses in Deuteronomy 33:17, Moses followed suit and just threw him in with the blessing of Manasseh, threw the tribe in there with Manasseh. They were kind of even though Manasseh's the firstborn, had the birthright, they're kind of the second class of the two. But in chapter 33 of Deuteronomy, verse 17, is where Moses gives the blessing. This is, Manasseh is the tribe of Gideon. And Gideon, the one judge that I think I relate to the most of all the judges. The one who said, well, give me a sign. Make the fleece wet and the ground dry, and God did it. And he said, well, make the ground wet and the fleece dry, and God did it. He still had doubts, just like we do. just like me. Okay, God, if you want me to do this, if this is what you have, then show me this. And God says, all right, easy, I did that. Well, okay, God, if you want me to do it. And it's funny how we do that. I've told the story before, but I'll never forget whenever God was very obviously moving me to Florida. I lived here and I was doing garage doors. God was calling me to go to Florida, and I'd already told my dad I'd come down and, when the time's right, and I was pushing for the time to be right at a later date. And God was working on me, and I was doing a garage door, and I was in a cul-de-sac, and there was construction going on. And if you've ever worked in a neighborhood, newly built neighborhood, which is what this was, there's never quiet in a neighborhood. Nobody goes to lunch at the same time. They're all, when you've got plumbers, electricians, framers, and all these, they want to get in and get their stuff done. So there's always noise. And of course, in that garage with that electric impact wrench and the metal and everything, it's just loud. And God's working on me. And I said, all right, God, in my mind, I said, all right, well, if now is the time to go, then just give me. And before I could even think the word peace, there was peace. And I stopped. And it was just like that right there in here. Just quiet. Not even birds singing. No chirping. Nothing like that. I said, all right, God, I guess you want me to go. But that I relate to Gideon. I think many of us relate to Gideon. Manasseh was a warrior tribe. In chapter 17, Ephraim and Manasseh, it seems that they were not separate tribes. They were not getting a separate division. Manasseh, half of Manasseh, was on the eastern side of the Jordan. The other half was in the land. And it seems from the reading that they were both going to occupy the same land. And there was no division. And it was a smaller area than they expected. And verse, I think it's 14. Yeah, verse 14, the children of Joseph spake unto Joshua, saying, why hast thou given me but one lot and one portion to inherit, seeing I am a great people, for as much as the Lord hath blessed me hitherto? And Joshua answered them, if thou be a great people, then get it thee up the wooded country. Cut down for thyself there in the land of Perizzites and the giants, if Mount Ephraim be too narrow for thee. Children of Joseph said, the hill is not enough for us. All the Canaanites that dwell in the land of the valley have chariots of iron, both they who are of Bethshean and her towns, and they who are of the valley of Jezreel. And Joshua spake unto the house of Joseph, even to Ephraim and to Manasseh, saying, thou art a great people and hast great power. Thou shalt not have one lot only, but the mountain shall be thine, for it is a wood, and thou shalt cut it down. The outgoings of it shall be thine. For thou shalt drive out the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots, and though they be strong. They were seems to be a warrior people. They were a warrior tribe, a strong tribe. Mentioned in a couple of places, Ephraim and Manasseh mentioned as warrior tribes. We look at its cities, and of course this isn't all of the cities, but some of its cities. First of all, Shechem. And Shechem's another one of those cities that are a border town. And I can't remember if it's on this map or not. Yeah, Shechem is on the border of Ephraim and Manasseh. And depending on who you study, it's in Manasseh. Somebody else says it's in Ephraim. So it's a border town, but it seems to be, from what I read, that it was probably in Shechem, or it was in Manasseh. Maybe even the town was possibly split, and they both shared parts of the town of Shechem. But the importance of Shechem is that it was the place of the Abrahamic covenant. When Abraham first got to the promised land, he built an altar in Shechem. And he worshiped the Lord there. And for that reason, if no other reason, Shechem would be a important, yea, maybe even a holy site to the Israelites. And it was there also that God told Abram, not yet Abraham, but he told Abram, he said, I'm going to make of you a great nation if you'll follow me, if you'll do this. And so it was there that the Abrahamic covenant was made. It's important because it's a city of refuge. On that map, you see there's a star at the city of Shechem, and that indicates a city of refuge. Beth-Shan, or Beth-Shan. Beth-Shan, you can see, is in the northeastern quadrant, on the border again, there with Issachar. And the importance of it was that that's what we really know Beth-Shan for, was because that's where the city is where they hung the body of Saul after he was killed and beheaded. They hung his body on the gates of Beth-Shan. So it's an important city for that reason. Then you have Megiddo. And Megiddo's on here. Megiddo is right on the eastern side of the mountains that run all the way through the country of Israel. If you go to a topographical, I'll get it out in a minute, map, you see that the mountains run all the way down from the north to the south, except right at the Jezreel Valley, there's a little break in those mountains. Now Megiddo sits, y'all know the name Megiddo from somewhere else? The battle, Armageddon. Megiddo sits on the eastern side of the valley of Megiddo, or the Jezreel Valley, or the valley of Armageddon, and that's where it's going to take place. And so, not only that, but it's a cool town to go to if you go to Israel. It's one of the great spots to go to. It was one of Solomon's great fortresses, and for the reason it's right on the edge of the valley. Right on the edge of that valley that was used as a place of commerce to move goods and things through that area. Then you have Endor, where Saul met the witch of Endor, after he had been rejected. Endor's not on this, okay? And this is an interesting thing. I got to looking for the city of Endor because it's not always easy to find on every map. And Endor is actually a little north of what we have on this map. It's not within the given boundaries of Manasseh, but let me find the verse. Verse 11. And Manasseh had in Issachar and in Asher Beth-Shan and her towns. And so I guess what we read here is that Beth-Shan would have been in Issachar, according to their records. Is that Beth-Shan was in Issachar and her towns. In Iblim, and Iblim's not on here, but Iblim is going to be right on that border between Megiddo and En-Gani, or whatever that's called. And her towns, and the inhabitants of Dor. Dor is up here inside the tribe of Asher, but it was part of Manasseh. Her towns, the inhabitants of Endor and her towns. Endor is not even close to Manasseh, but somehow or another, they were given the town of Manasseh. They inhabited the town of Endor, and were included as part of the tribe of Manasseh. And the inhabitants of Tanakh. Tanakh is right down in this area, right in that bottom loop, right down in there. Her towns, the inhabitants of Megiddo, her towns, even 3 countries. Okay, so you've got these border towns and towns inside Asher and Issachar. They don't even fit within the boundaries, but they're towns of Manasseh. And so there are these cities that are part of it. One of the last one that's important is Samaria. Why is Samaria important? Why do we know Samaria? Because that's where Jesus traveled to. Jesus traveled to and met the woman at the well there in Samaria. And we also know Samaria because of what? The Good Samaritan. The Samaritans and the Jews hated each other. But the area of Samaria is found inside the boundaries of Manasseh. Then we come to, lastly, the descendants. And something kind of interesting happens here. Verse 2, there was a lot for the rest of the children. Let me just go back to verse 1. There was also a lot for the tribe of Manasseh, for he was the firstborn of Joseph, to wit, for Machir, the firstborn of Manasseh, the father of Gilead, because he was a man of war. Therefore, he had Gilead and Bashan. And that's the east side of Jordan. Okay, we looked at that a few weeks ago. There was also a lot for the rest of the children of Manasseh by their families. For the children of Bezer, for the children of Helek, for the children of Azriel, for the children of Shechem, for the children of Hepher, and for the children of Shemida. These were the male children of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, by their families. These were the families. Okay? So he had 6 sons. At this point, there are 6 families that are all from the male sons. But Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, you go back to Hepher, who was one of the original sons, he had no sons. Okay? The son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, had no sons but daughters. And these are the names of his daughters: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they came near before Eleazar the priest, and before Joshua the son of Nun, and before the princes, saying, The Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our brethren. Therefore, according to the commandment of the Lord, he gave them inheritance among the brethren their father. And there fell 10 portions to Manasseh, beside the land of Gilead and Bashan, which are on the other side of Jordan. So there's 10 divisions of this tribe. How does that work out? He had 6 sons. And 5 daughters of Zelophehad. How does that work out? Well, he had 5 sons that had families. But Zelophehad had no sons. And so he had only daughters. And so you take that son out of the equation and add in the 5 daughters. They did good. I'm just going to tell you, in this day, women didn't get anything. Women were second-class citizens at best. But in Numbers chapter 27, if you go down to number 3, the daughters of Zelophehad, that's spelled wrong in that point, I guess, claim the rights given by Moses, given by God in Numbers 27. Go to Numbers 27. This is a pretty good move on their part. In a time where women were not considered, they were not given anything, they do a pretty good job here. Verse 1, Then came the daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, of the family of the families of Manasseh, the son of Joseph. And these are the names of his daughters: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They stood before Moses, before Eleazar the priest, and before the princes and all the congregation, by the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, saying, Our father died in the wilderness. Now, theirs wasn't the only father that died. But our father died in the wilderness. He was not in the company of them that gathered themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but died in his own sin and had no sons. Why should the name of our father be done away from among his family because he hath no son? Give unto us therefore a possession among the brethren of our father. And Moses brought their cause before the Lord. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, The daughters of Zelophehad speak right. Thou shalt surely give them a possession of an inheritance among their father's brethren, and thou shalt cause the inheritance of their father to pass unto them. Wow. But imagine this. Think about this. What if they had simply thought, we're just women. Nobody's going to give us anything. Yeah, we'll just take whatever's left over, and we'll just, whatever we are given, that's what we'll take, and which is what many Christians do. I'll just, if I find a document, I'll find my document. If not, no big, if I get better, I get better. And and so many Christians, they said, you know what? We're going to open our mouths wide, which is what God tells us to do. We're going to open our mouths wide, and we're going to go and we're going to ask for something that nobody probably is going to give to us, but we're going to ask for it. Imagine if they'd have never asked. They wouldn't have gotten that inheritance. They would have never gotten that inheritance. But when they went and asked, God said, they are absolutely right. And the Lord, verse 8, and thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if a man die and have no son, then ye shall cause his inheritance to pass unto his daughter. Wow. Yeah, equal rights. Because they took a chance and asked for something nobody would have given them. And Moses, being a good man, went and talked to the Lord about it. And they got an inheritance. They got an inheritance because they asked. I'm not calling Moses God, but knowing that Moses was a good man, I believe, knowing that Moses was a good man and he would seek the face of God, they presented their case and God rewarded them for it. God says, if you'll ask, I'll pour out my showers of blessing upon you. You have not, because you ask not. And oftentimes you don't ask big enough. Open your mouth wide that I may pour out a huge blessing. Man, they went and asked for a big, big blessing. And God gave it to them. What a great testament to the equality. And people talk about God being a chauvinistic God, that He's unloving, that He only took care of men. And people talk about that. You can see right here the equality of God.
If I read this right, they go to the rest of history, being able, if there was no sons.
That's the law. That's the law. Whether they upheld it or not, we don't, there's no way to know that always took place, but it was what God said. He said, tell the nation. And when He says children of Israel, tell the children of Israel, what He's saying is this is set up. This is set up this way, and this is how it shall be from now on. Unless something comes and changes it, of course. But yeah, I would believe that it's for all of eternity, for as long as we exist. Dave, would you dismiss us in prayer? Dismiss us in prayer?
Lord Jesus, thank you for your love and your goodness. And Father, as we study these things, sometimes